What's up guys, it's Talha here again today. Today what we are going to discuss will be about today we are going to discuss some calculus, and then if we have time then we are going to discuss some fundamentals of computers. So today in calculus we are going to discuss what is differentiation, and then I'm going to discuss what are some of the rules, of differentiation, what are some of the rules for differentiation. That is i.e. for sum, for sum, for your differences, powers, and multiples. So I'm going to discuss the rules for these four terminologies, and then for in fundamentals of computers we are going to discuss, if we have time after we're done with our first topic, then we are going to discuss fundamentals of computer. Inside that we are going to discuss the functions of operating system, which we studied today at the university. The operating system. Just a reminder that I make these videos. I make videos of the topics on daily basis. The topics we study at the university. So these topics which I am discussing today, we studied these topics at the university. So this is kind of a revision of what we study at the university. So, and also if some of you guys don't understand or cannot catch up with your classmates or with the teacher, so I think this is the best opportunity for you to catch up and to understand the lectures, because I explain them again, so it's beneficial for you guys. So first of all, let's discuss what is differentiation. So first we have derivative. The derivative. I gave a whole explanation of derivative in the last video. We have derivation, or the derivative. So the process of calculating a derivative. The process of calculating a derivative is called differentiation. The process of calculating your derivative is called your differentiation. Now there are certain rules for the differentiation of different types of functions. You have you have different rules for different functions. So if you have a plus sign, if you have a function with of summing two functions, what is the derivative of when there are two functions and they are summed up, they are differentiated. I mean they have a difference. There's a minus sign in between. Then there's a power function. There's multiples. So first we will discuss rule number one. So rule number one is the derivative, or so in differentiation, so the derivative of any function can be denoted by d by dx. So dy by dx means that you are taking the derivative of y with respect to x. If you say d of f of x by dx, so you are taking the derivative. So these y and f of x is the same thing, but this means here that you are taking the derivative of f of x with respect to x. You can also write it as y dash, which is also known as the derivative. You can also write f of x dash. This also means the derivative. So there are different notations you can use to show that this is the derivative of the function. So rule number one is the derivative of any constant. So d by dx of f of x, and let's say that f of x equals any constant, so that will be equal to 0. That is the rule. That is rule number one. The second rule is the power rule. So you have, for example, you have d by dx d by dx of dx of f of x, and let's say your f of x d by dx is x is x power n. So what power rule says is that the derivative of this is will be equal to n. So the power becomes your coefficient, and x again, and then you subtract 1 from the power. All of these rules are proved in the book, so you can have a look there, but in this video I'm not going to prove each and every one. I'm just going to state the rules instead. So this is the power rule. Then now after that we have the summation rule. So this was the power rule, this was the constant rule, and we should also discuss here the constant multiple rule. Constant multiple rule. So what constant multiple rule says is what constant multiple rule says is, if you have d by dx of f of x, and let's say that f of x is equal to c x cx, so or cx power n. So what the derivative, so the derivative of this function, this function is going to be equal to c will okay, so this constant will be shifted to the left, or will be shifted or will come out of the derivative. So c, so this will be c d by dx of x power n. So this will be c n x n minus 1. So this is our power rule, and this is our constant multiple rule. So what constant multiple rule is says that if you have a constant and it's being multiplied by your function or with your variable, so it jumps out of the derivative, and the derivative is applied on the rest of the term. So this is the constant multiple rule. Now you have some summation rule. So if you have the so let's say that you have the derivative of f of x plus, so you have two functions, you have f of x and you have g of x. So if you have the derivative of f of x plus g of x plus g of x, so what this so the derivative of these two functions, when they are being summed up, this is going to be equal to derivative of the first function. That's pretty easy. Derivative of the first function plus the derivative of the second function. So this is pretty easy because it just separates the terms, and the derivative is applied on the individual term. Same is the difference rule. Same is your difference rule, where you have derivative, so let's say this sign was the minus sign. So if this is the case where you have where you have two functions and there's a minus sign in between, so what you're going to do, you're going to apply the separate derivatives, but here instead you're going to differentiate, or you're going to differ, or you're going to add a minus sign here instead of the positive sign, and d by dx of g of x will remain the same. So this is the difference rule. This is the summation rule. Let's now jump to the product rule and quotient rule, the most important rules of differentiation. So you have product rule. So let's say that you have d by dx, and you have the same two functions, you have f of x and g of x. So f of x into g of x. So up till now you'll say that, oh okay, these two, this is going to be equal to the derivative of f of x into derivative of g of x, but you will be wrong, because this is wrong. The actual derivative, what this is going to be equal to is, there's this. So for the product rule, there's a formula that is, you take the first term, so first derivative of the second term. So first is f of x, the derivative of the second term, first derivative of second plus second. So plus the second function, that is g of x, derivative of the first. So this is what this the derivative of two functions that are being multiplied, that is what it is going to be equal to. So this is the product rule, where you have first derivative of second plus second derivative of first. Now same is the quotient rule. Same is the quotient rule. So if you have two derivatives, d by dx of f of x by g of x, so same as this rule, but the only difference is here you add a positive sign, and the second term is after the first. The when the first term, so when the first term is left alone, it is first, and when the second term is left alone, it is on the second place. But in when we are taking the derivative of the two quotients where g of x is not equal to 0, so what the derivative of this is going to be equal to, it is going to be equal to second g of x, the second term, as I stated, second term derivative of the second function derivative of the first function minus the first difference is that the second term, when it's left alone, it takes the first place here, and this positive sign is replaced by the negative sign in the quotient rule. So second function derivative of the first function minus first function derivative of the second function divided by the second term or second function g of x whole square. So this is your quotient rule. This was product rule, this was quotient rule, and another you have a power rule where you have a negative integer. So when you have a negative integer, so let's say that d by dx of x of let's say that you have x power minus n. So what that is going to be equal to, that is going the derivative of this is going to be equal to minus n, or minus so minus n x power minus n minus 1. So this term is going to be shifted to minus when you have a negative integer or negative power of x. So this was about the differentiation rules of differentiation rules for different functions, and also we studied second and third derivatives. So let's say that if the derivative of x exists, and you have the, for example, if I say that f of dash x is the derivative and it exists, so, and now you can also take the second derivative, means you can take the derivative of the derivative of f of x again, so that will be f of double x. So for example, if I say that let me calculate d by dx of x square, so what is, according to power rule, this will be equal to 2x, and 2 minus 1 equals 1, so that is equal to 2x. Now I want to calculate the derivative of this again, so that is going to be equal to 1 into 2, so that will be 2, and 1 minus 1 equals 0, so x power 0 equals 1. So if I take the derivative of x squared 2 times, I get 2. If I take the derivative of this again, so you guys remember that earlier I stated that the derivative of any constant is 0, so the third derivative of f of x when f of x equals x squared is 0. Now let's so I think we have time, we have 6 minutes, so let's discuss some fundamentals of computers. So in fundamentals of computers, we were to discuss the functions of operating systems. So operating system is a system software which coordinates all the tasks related with your hardware and software, and it is, and the functions in the functions of operating system, or the functions you cannot control. Some of them you can control, some of them are voluntary, and some of them are involuntary, means that you don't have to control every single function of the operating system. It does it by itself, and that is the privilege of the operating system. You have different types of operating systems. You have Windows, you have Mac OS X, that is what I use. You have Linux, you have Unix, and you have many more operating systems, but the most popular one in the market right now is Windows, and on the second number is Mac. So Windows has conquered the market, is conquering the market place right now. So it's the most famous one. So the functions of operating system include so let's say the first function is to, when you turn on the computer or when you turn off the computer. So that's the job of operating system, to do it for you. You just have to click the shutdown button or sleep button. So uh, you have different buttons. For example, you have sleep button, where the computer goes into sleep. It saves all the documents you have opened into the RAM. So when you come back, you open the lid or you open the computer, you wake up the computer, all of the documents come back immediately. Second, you have hibernation. Hibernation is if you hibernate, if your computer goes into a state of hibernation for a little while, for a longer period of time than the sleeping function. So the all documents then are saved into your hard disk instead of the RAM. So they are saved in the hard disk. So whenever you need them, you can just fetch them from the hard disk. Third, you have restart. So restart. I'm messing up the spelling. Sorry. And you have shutdown. Shutdown. Booting. Booting is the process of shutting down the computer or restarting the computer. Booting is the process of shutting down or opening or waking up or turning on your operating system. So what there are two types of booting. There's one is a cool boot and one is a warm boot. So when you restart a computer, you are warm booting the computer, and when the computer is shut down and you turn the computer on again, that is what is called cold boot or cool boot, because you can take it as when the computer is still in a warm state and you turn it on, so you can remember it that way. That's kind of a mnemonic. So you then when the computer is in a warm state, you restart it, and that's a warm boot. And when the computer was completely shut down and now you turn it on again, so that will be your cold boot. So that was the shutting and down and turning the computer on again. So that is one of the functions of operating system. You have different functions. For example, managing files. You have managing storage, which is the most important. Managing storage, and also an important point in managing storage, there's a term called a virtual memory or virtual storage. So what it does, if you have a less amount of RAM, or if you need more RAM, you specify a specific area of hard disk, a specific part of a hard disk to work as RAM for you. So that, for example, this is a hard disk. So for example, this area you specify for the RAM. So this area is now won't work as a hard disk, but this area will work as your RAM, and it will process the instructions it gets from as an input, and then it will transfer them into memory, and then from the memory it's going to output the data. So this storage, or this memory, is then called your virtual memory, and you can increase and decrease the size of this as well. And And using flash drives or removable storages instead of hard disk is more uh, functional, because it's faster than your hard disk. And you have many other functions. You have administrative functions of operating system. You have security functions. So you have security functions. You have uh, uh, you have monitoring functions. So you have many functions. So there are many functions of operating system which it does secretly, or which it does, you can say, beforehand, to make it easy for an administrator or for the user to control an to control the computer, and you don't have to do much, and you don't have to order, or you don't have to instruct the operating system to do that. It actually does all these things for you by itself. So that is why it is operating system is the most important part of your computer. Alright guys, that was it for today's video. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and bye bye.